Hello and good evening. Welcome to I don't know I should know the show number, but let's say 6 of Hyped. um, I'm joined today this evening by none other than Pete Jones, the Bristol Aztecs head coach, as he so kindly put on his title board there. We're going to spend some time talking with Pete this evening about the Bristol Aztecs program, and in particular, like their journey to their recent Britball win, which I was extremely excited about. Before we go, I always like to sort of let everyone know if I've got any pre-existing relationships with our guests when we do these shows, just so it's sort of like, I don't know, people sort of understand how I know people, if I do know them at all. Pete is my former head coach. I played for the Aztecs 3 years ago. I think it might be
2022, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know the year. Yeah, something like
2022, my first year as head coach. Yeah.
Was it your first? I didn't know that. Right. Oh, okay, cool. God. So yeah, it's funny because I was going to say in that year we felt really hard done by not winning that Britball. We had a great team, but it always felt to me like back then that we were, like the club were on their way to that goal, right? But yeah, so just sort of, I've played under Pete. I've also played against Pete years ago when he played for the Bristol Aztecs and I played for what were called the PA Knights, or then the MH Knights, and now called the Rushmore Knights. So yeah, we were, I suppose, adversaries, if you like.
Yeah, I think I probably held you or face caged you at some point.
You probably tried. I was very quick, so you probably. No, yeah, you and fucking what's his name?
Chaz.
Chaz, yeah, we're always a handful, man.
I think also, were you not, when I was Apache head coach, we also played the Knights, and I think you were playing them, weren't you, as well?
Yeah. I could distinctly remember a 1-point win that we got at your ground. Were you head coach then?
Was that the one that was like 55-54?
Yeah.
No, I was OC. I was OC that year.
Right.
Yeah, and Aaron Sequilor, Rainsy was still head coach.
Yeah.
And you guys were running wishbone counter.
Yeah.
And Aaron Sequilor had about 300 rushing yards.
Yeah, he's unreal.
And we actually, I think we were winning at halftime, right? And our starting middle linebacker at the time, who was this like Hungarian guy, had to go to this is like the most Britball thing ever, had to go to a concert. And so he had to leave the game at 3:30. And then suddenly we didn't have enough linebackers for the second half. And the Knights were running wishbone counter. And
that reminds me of a guy, I think his name was Adam Naylor, guy that plays for, or played, I don't know if he still plays. This is years back. He played for Shropshire Revolution, and they played a game, and then immediately after the game, he went to a festival, and he just wore his kit. There's pictures of him, his shoulder pads, drinking beers and stuff. I think it was Download Fest. I don't know what it was, but that, it reminds me of that. But so is there anywhere particular, Pete, that you want to start and
No, I mean, I guess obviously you just kind of mentioned where we were 4 years ago when you played for us.
Yeah.
And we every year I've been here as head coach, we felt like we could win the Britball.
Yeah.
And every year at the start of the year, we've been like, okay, we got 12 games to play this year, and the aim is that we finish the season, winning the Britball. And I think like arguably we could have any year. That first year I was head coach, we lost that semi-final at Manchester by 5 points.
Yeah, I know. Wow.
And
it's a
yeah, and
I don't like looking at the bottom of it.
Yeah, and I think they beat the Warriors pretty comfortably, I think, that year, didn't they?
Yeah, they were solid that year.
They were really good. And then the following year, we got beaten more comprehensively by Manchester, which kind of to some extent felt like a little bit of a step back or whatever. But I think the general trend, we were still upwards, and Manchester was still really good. And again, they won the bowl pretty comfortably again that year. And I think you know, if we beat Manchester in those semi-finals and get to the bowl, I think we have a good chance of winning those games.
Yeah.
But you know, it's definitely been good for our development. You know, Manchester, really good team. You know, even still this year, you know, everyone's going on about, you know, Manchester going to be rubbish this year with all these guys leaving. They still got loads of good players. They still got loads of good coaches.
Yeah, they're class. Look, I always said, even, you know, prior to them eventually winning a Britball, but I always said for years as they were getting their, you know, that they were growing up through the leagues and just winning and getting better and better and growing as an organisation. They were like the textbook example of what you want any lower league team to try and do, right?
Yeah, and they've been winning off the field for like a long time, and still are, you know. And you know, we need more teams like that in Britball, and there's definitely things that Manchester were doing a couple of years ago that, you know, we've kind of taken the view, like, you know, okay, we're going to do that, and like, you know, like there's no one out there who's successful who just dreams everything up themselves. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, the Chiefs are having a rough time at the minute, but, you know, Andy Reid's always kind of pulling stuff out of playbooks from the 20s, 30s, 40s, right? And
he's
following things from here and there. You know what I mean? Like if anyone out there is too stubborn to borrow good ideas from other people, like you're bound to kind of fail, really, from my perspective. Do you know what I mean?
So what do you think was the what's like the formula for winning a Britball? Like, how did, you know, since you became head coach, how did you get to this point where you actually won the Britball? What do you think was like the things that you put in place that made that happen?
I don't think there's kind of like any kind of like one thing, but like a couple of things that have been important for us, and it could be quite a long list, right? But like, I don't know. Number one is we've got a good staff, and we've got a pretty large staff.
Yeah.
And I think we will find ways to utilize people in the way that, you know, works for them and the program. And I've got guys who've coached on both sides of the ball. I've got, you know, guys, we got a couple of guys this year who've been like really instrumental in helping the team, who've just been doing analytic stuff, who've not been to a practice all year, but they've been chewing through game film and drawing up scout cards, and because that's what they can do, because they live in other parts of the country and they want to help be involved in our program. You know, that's huge. And, you know, we've got, you know, Rian, who was OC for the back half of the year. You know, he's only been coaching football for like 2 years. He's only like, I think he's 15 now. I think he was 15 on his last. He's like 20 or whatever, right? And but he's you know, he's done really well, and, you know, he wasn't quite ready at the start of the year, but he was halfway through the year. So we just made the change and got it done. So we, you know, we've kind of been pragmatic. And I think, you know, I definitely give the coordinators a lot of autonomy, which means they give the positional coaches a lot of autonomy. So everyone kind of feels like they're engaged. So the staff thing has definitely been a big part of it. You know, we've been getting things right off the field. You know, the home games at Dings that are always an event, and you guys come and stream them, which is always great. And, you know, more and more players bringing their partners to games and friends to watch games, and kind of keeps guys kind of keyed in. And, you know, a couple of years ago, someone at BAFA had done some stat stuff, and they told me, and I think this might have actually been 2022, that year you played, even with you pushing the average up, I think the average age of the team was like 22, right?
That's right. That's what I was going to mention as well.
If you hadn't been there, we'd have been about, the average age would have been about 19, but the average age of the team was 22, and we lost a semi-final by 5 points to a team that won the bowl comprehensively. And that was good, and it was a great place to be. But, you know, we were a little bit young, we were a little bit immature, we weren't really quite as durable mentally and physically as we could be. And then the Manchester team that we looked across the field to, you know, got loads of kind of real smart, savvy veterans, you know, Sam Bloomfield and Jack Watson, and, you know, some of the guys on their line, and you know, like, and you know, like there's no doubt about it, you know, we needed to get more physically and mentally kind of durable. And, you know, we needed some more kind of like men on the team. And by being competitive every year, what we found is, you know, since I've been head coach, which is basically post-COVID, we've not really had any retirements, any substantial retirements. Like, everyone stayed on board, and we just got better every year and added new guys in at the bottom. So that's definitely been a kind of a big help as well. And, you know, we've always been kind of a meritocracy. Like, you see it in loads of teams in Britball, right? You know, any team in Britball, you know, where there's guys that they're kind of like favorites and they're kind of stalwart to the team.
Yeah.
And you see it on opposition teams and you think, oh my God, how is how is that guy starting above that guy? And you see someone on film and you think, oh, they're going to play him against us because people want to take us down, and they don't, and you think, oh my God, they've missed an opportunity there. And there are lots of teams that aren't a meritocracy. It's about who's the regular guys at the team, who's been there forever, who's the coach's mate, these kinds of things. We are a meritocracy, and that kind of keeps it fresh and competitive and that kind of thing. And I think that's really kind of positive as well. So there's no kind of one thing. Like, definitely we really benefit from the sort of really strong university scene in the area. And we do benefit from it. We're also kind of like a part of it. Like, we mentioned Jazz earlier. It was some guys who were involved in Aztecs and were Bullets coaches that set up the Barracuda.
Right.
Ben Erard's was on the Aztec committee for years and was an Aztec guy, and he set up the Pride, and I coached the Pride with him in the first few years. And so, like, a lot of the good stuff that's going on is kind of related to our program, and so we've been involved in that. And everyone will always kind of say stuff like, oh, it's all Bullets players and STS players. Like, I think 3 years ago we had more players from Exeter than we did UE or SGS, and I think the year before last we had more Cardiff guys than anywhere else.
And
this year just gone, we had plenty of UE guys. So like, you got to look for players from everywhere every year, and like, even like, I think Bath Spa are probably kind of like perennially the worst team in Bucks, or pretty close, right?
Yeah.
But every year in the off season, I will go and watch a Bath Spa game, and there'll be someone who I'll be like, he can help us. 3 or 4 years ago, I went to watch a Bath Spa game, and they had this kid called Tom Evans who was playing a little bit of everything, and he came to Aztecs, played a little bit, helped a little bit, ended up playing Bullets. Did his masters at UE, got an interception in the semi-final against Leeds, and won a bowl ring there. And we got a D lineman now called Harry Ward, who I went to watch a Bath Spa game, and it was just like everything was like slow motion, and then it looks like Michael Strahan's running around in there, and it's just like, who's that kid? And you've got to turn over every stone, and I'm sure there's some people in certain parts of the country who are like, oh, that uni team, they're rubbish, they ain't going to help us. Well, we found kids from Bath Spa who are absolutely awful, and they've helped us win games in the Prem. So you just can't sleep on anything. You've got to turn over every stone on and off the field, to make progress, really.
So, and there's you guys have also got the not the Apache. Yes, it is the Apache.
Yeah.
The Apache, but then you got but you don't have under 19, under 16 structure at the moment. So how do you work on that sort of development and that feed of players, from a recruitment
perspective? We did actually start the youth team up again last year, and so we did play under 19 Division 2, but kind of you need the resource to run it properly, right? And we didn't have that resource for years. What we found historically, right, is that having a good youth team does not translate to having a good senior team.
Right.
And there's a million reasons for that. But you like the London Blitz have had a lean couple of years by their standards, right? And their U19 program is still awesome. Like, I don't know how many kids there are playing college football that have been through that Blitz U19 program or playing in Europe, but there's like loads, and it people will all know about Glenn Tunga because he's Glenn Tunga, right? But there's loads of these guys, and they've still struggled even with that great youth program. And we just found that, like, year on year, you'd get kids graduate from the youth program, and they'd go to Europe, or they just wouldn't want to play, or they'd go back to rugby, or they'd want to be a rock star, or find girls, or beer, or whatever. And it was taking a lot of time and effort. And obviously, when we wrapped up the Aztecs youth team 10, 15 years ago, the Pride were running a local community league called BACL, which was, kind of like 9-a-side kitted,
Yeah.
And there were like 5 local teams in and around Bristol. And there's still some guys playing for us now that were in that league. But then the Pride got really big, and that became a really good, like, you might say that was our youth team for years. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there were like local kids from Bristol and kids that came into the area from other youth teams who would play Pride and then play Aztecs. So yeah, we didn't have a youth team in the BAFA leagues, but we've always had good players from Pride. And I reckon sort of 2019, 20, just pre-COVID, there were a couple of years where like half the Aztec squad were Pride players, So we kind of have always had that. But now I think there's with the NFL Academy and with other stuff going on, like we do need our own U19 program. I think irrelevant of whether they come and play Aztecs or Apache or whatever, it does make sense to have one. And a lot of those kids will play football and then go to Pride or UE or the other local unis or whatever.
Yeah.
And it helps kind of fertilize the kind of network of clubs that feed us as well,
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things that, from an insider's view, once I got to SGS and because you were part of the sort of academy, SGS Academy thing, wasn't it? Then the Aztecs. Yeah. And I remember saying to people, and I've said it since, like Bristol's sort of become the mecca of American football for the UK. Like I didn't realize just how developed things were until I went there, and like just the facilities that are available, like you say, the saturation of talent and great teams that are in that area. It's a great place to grow up and learn how to play American football because of the numerous programs that are available. And just the level of talent and coaches that are drawn to that area now. And I can imagine, Pete, that now that you've got that Britball ring, well, I suppose the rings are on order, but you've got the right to get them printed. That should be another boost for the area, right? And there's now another reason for people to sort of buy into this, to Bristol as a place to go and play football. Are you expecting like this to change the way that you approach recruiting now that you've got that? We've won a Britball. Does that change things? Are you changing the standards? Are you worried about people that don't have the heart in the right place? Like, does this win change any of the recruitment approach?
No, it doesn't. I mean, so my first year as head coach, UE had a guy called Brian Peavy playing for them, who'd been in camp with the Arizona Cardinals the previous year. And the previous year we'd had that regional league, and the last year pre-COVID, the Aztecs has gone 4-6 in the Prem, and I think we lost to the Kent Exiles, and I was trying to recruit Brian Peavy, who'd been in camp with the Cardinals the previous year, to come and play Aztecs, and it wasn't like, oh, we're a semi-final team or we got to the bowl last year and we're trying to win it this year. It was like, yeah, we were 4-6 last year. We're just trying to get better, and I was trying to recruit a guy who'd been in the NFL, and like, I will do that now. Like, obviously UE have announced an offensive lineman today who was in camp with the Bucks until like a month ago or whatever. I'll be trying to recruit him. And that hasn't changed from us now being a team who've won the bowl to a team that had been 4-6 the previous season in the Prem when I took the job on. Like, you would try and always recruit the best players. And like, there's guys, there's, a couple of guys who've been playing in the ELF this year that I've been recruiting hard to come to Aztecs. And like, I think there are people that won't try and recruit guys because they think they'll never come or whatever.
Right.
And
yeah.
You've got to try it, right? And the long, like, I don't think who is going to win the Britball is decided early in the season every year, but the majority of your recruitment is done by May. Right. And if you've got it right, you're probably going to be in the Britball. If you got it wrong, you're probably not. And it ain't always quite that kind of clear cut, but I think, if you'd probably spoke to George Foster in May and he knew where he was with the Titans squad, he would have probably said, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a long shot for us to get in Britball this year, looking at how they'd recruited and how we'd recruited. But, he'll probably be pretty confident that he can get there next year or the year after, whatever, and they'll keep working because that's what they do. Based on the fact we got to the Britball last year, when we'd recruited the guys we'd recruited, by like April, May, I was pretty confident we'd get back there again this year.
Yeah.
And I don't guarantee that it's going to happen, but like, you know, recruitment and how you can build the squad is so important. And, you know, you get higher standards. And you know, being around UE, like, you know, the way, you know, the way Dan Mayer does recruitment at UE and the way Ben's been doing it at Pride for years, it's like, you know, if you haven't got a player in a certain spot that you need, you don't make do, you don't put up with it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, what are we going to do? You know, it might be moving a guy for another position. It might be going really hard after one specific guy that, you know, you want, you know, so, and with all the good university football in the area, you know, if there's any spot on the team where it's like, okay, we're short of people, it's like, I always know who the better guys are at that position in our area who are playing, and you just go after them, you know what I mean? And I think there are a lot of teams that just kind of like make do, you know?
Yeah. See what they can do with what they've got. And so it sounds like to me like that, you know, to be successful and to do what you've done in Britball, you sound more like a general manager, right? Like there's loads of stuff that that you're doing that's not just on the field focused. You know, there's stuff to manage outside of it. Does that factor into how you've got your OC and DC set up as well, to like, you know, giving them that autonomy?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I've had a lot more help running the club this year than previous years.
Right.
But like, you know, even this year, right? Like on a game day, I'll get there about 10:30 and I'll put the end zone pylons out, get the chains out, put the sideline markers out on my own, meet you with your streaming kit or whatever, you know, before anyone else has really got there.
Yeah.
And, you know, I you know, for all our games this year, apart from the Amsterdam game where we had to like mark the pitch up pre-game, and like, I'll take the Thursday off work and go and mark the pitch up at Dings. Once or twice I've done it like by myself because like it's just it's what needs doing, right? And sometimes you can kind of get frustrated about it, and but it's like it's what needs doing, so you just got to get it done right. And there are some parts of the season this year where, you know, I've kind of made, you know, I have kind of, I don't know, been very keyed into what we're doing on offense and defense and trying to influence it and influence what the coaches are doing. And there's other weeks where I know it's all under control. You know, we've, you know, early in the season this year on offense, you know, we ended up picking up 2 really good offensive coaches quite late on in pre-season. And so we were kind of flush with good offensive coaches. And there just wasn't, you know, there's a limit on how many voices you can have. And I just kind of step back and, you know, there's an element of, you know, people figuring out how to work with each other. And, you know, there's times and situations like that where an intervention is required. And there's times when an intervention is not required because people will learn to work together and figure out how to work together. And doing it organically can be more impactful than me saying, okay, you do this, you do that. You don't speak to him like that. You don't speak to him like that. You know, sometimes you'll get, you know, you'll have, you know, maybe a coach speaks a little bit out of turn to another coach. Sometimes you might need to intervene, but normally if someone's been a little bit harsh with someone, they realize and they'll go up to them afterwards and say, oh, you know, sorry if I shouted at you. Like, you know, I think sometimes there's a lot of tendency for a lot of people to like over intervene. And, you know, I'm quite relaxed. And some people will look at that and probably think, you know, I'm too relaxed and I just let stuff go. But like where like an intervention is absolutely required, you know, a change of coordinator or whatever, like we'll do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And with the so I want to focus on the actual final actually quickly. So the I mean, you know how excited I was about that anyway. I'm messaging you. I was so. I mean, you know, I'm a big Aztec supporter. There's still guys that, you know, that I played with a few years ago, and that I know even had relationships before that. Involved with the club, and so, but also, you know, it's you make a really good point about that. You know, when the year that I played, there were so many young lads there, like 19, 20 years old, and they I don't want to badmouth these guys. They're young athletes. They were very good at what they did. They cared so much, but they had a tendency to be a bit immature at times, or have an immature reaction to things. And to see some of those lads, like, to see how they prepared for that game and leading up to it. And I remember just feeling it, like, they've got to win this. And, I really backed them because, they're people I know. So it was a really exciting, thing for me. I imagine you went through completely different emotions. But what I wanted to sort of know or ask about was, at what point in the game did you think we've got them? Like, we've won this?
I think it was probably pretty late.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt like, right, last year, I think we were 19-16 down, and they were kind of arguing with each other and the refs on the sideline and stuff, and we hadn't really rattled then. And last year I thought, oh, we're in a good spot here. I think we can win this. And then we didn't. They had like more endurance than us in the fourth quarter, and Andy Owusu was still like, he was still looking fresh in the fourth quarter last year. And this year, right, it was like, it kind of, and there's lots of things that can turn a game, right? But like, it felt like we were making plays on special teams. Sam Hodge, made that great hit on the punt returner.
Yeah.
And all the rest threw their flags, and then decided that actually it was completely clean. They just threw their flags because it was such a big hit.
Yeah.
And then on the next one, Sam recovered a punt because it bounced off one of their guys. And so it felt like we got the better of them on special teams. It felt like we were winning the battle at the line of scrimmage. Even early on in the game, we were like running the ball well, and they didn't really manage to get Andy going. And so, we were in the third quarter, and I was like, at one point I think we were 21-7 down, and it was like, okay, we're 2 scores down, but like, I feel like we're just edging the battle on the line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball, and we're looking better on special teams. And I think that's a good space to be in. And you can only do so much. Like, there's a point at which the players need to go out and do what they do. And they did, Ethan had a good game, and, the D-line really stepped up. And, obviously there were a few guys who made big plays at the end of the game, but, T was really big for us during the game. And, we had a bunch of guys that just kind of played well. And there were some frustrating times, like D is an unreal player, and he made some huge plays like he always does. But
crazy.
Yeah, but it felt like outside of him on broken plays, there wasn't really anything they were consistently getting going.
Yeah.
And so I was relatively confident that it was going to stay tight and we'd get back into it. But I'd say I was only kind of real confident when we recovered that punt in the red zone. And that was, I think, start of the fourth.
Well, and I think yes, it was. Yeah. And there was another big play, turnover you guys scored on, and I thought Traff was going to take it all the way in, mate. I would have put my house on him winning that race and running into the. So when I was at the Aztecs, he was the fastest player. I remember everyone saying Traff's our fast player. Well, I was like, a D lineman. They're like, yeah, and I see him. I was like, oh my god, the guy's unreal. So fast forward a few years, and he's in the final, and he scoops this ball up, and he's just running, and I'm thinking, he's going to score. He's going to score.
Yeah, I mean, he was getting chased by Eden, right? And like,
that's right. Yeah.
He's a decent athlete as well.
But I'm not trying to take something away from him, but I would have had, I mean, I remember feeling at that point, like, momentum is massively in the Aztecs' favor. These sort of plays are they're sort of like indicative of a win, right? Like you're sacking their quarterback, you're stripping the ball, you're turning it over and getting your offense into a great scoring position. Like those are all like positive cues, right? That
they are
for you. Everything's you're in a much more optimistic position.
Yeah, and I think that, like, last year, like, we'd still not beaten the Titans. We'd lost to them twice on the bounce, and going into that semi-final game, we'd not really it was all about trying to win that Titans game.
Yeah,
and then it was like, okay, it was almost like a separate kind of 2-week season. It was like, okay, we got another 2 weeks to go. We get another pop at the Warriors, but it wasn't as well kind of like sort of organized, and we had to give everything to beat the Titans. Whereas this year, going into the Titans game, and there was definitely a chance that there was a bit of risk there.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't practice quite as hard going into that semi-final. We didn't do lots of hitting. We were kind of very mindful that, we had a huge game against the Titans coming up, but, the aim was to win the Britball sort of 3 weeks after that, 2 weeks after that, whatever it was. And we didn't want to like expend all our energy in that Titans game. We had a couple of sort of players that didn't play in that game for various reasons, and I was fine with that. And, we kind of went into that Titans game a little bit undercooked, but I knew that. And that was deliberate because, you can't peak every week. And it's really hard to peak in the first week of August and then keep that going for another month. And I think something that, the Warriors have always been so good at is because they get to the Britball every year, they're kind of the way they apportion everything and plan out all their practices. It's the same every year. If your team that 1 year you're not in the playoffs and then the following year you get to the bowl, or you get to the bowl 1 year and the following year you don't, like that's quite a lot of change. It's plus or minus a month. So this year it was like, okay, we're gonna rather than planning to win the semi-final and then planning to win the bowl, we're gonna plan to win the bowl and do it that way. And it just definitely felt a little bit more sort of deliberate. And when we did get past the Titans, it was like, okay, we're kind of where we wanted to be, we're where we planned to be, and now we know what we need to do over the next 2 weeks to get where we want to be in 2 weeks' time. And so there was kind of a level of confidence going into the game as well, and some sort of calmness,
There was also the draw, the last game of the season. Like we live streamed that you drew with them. It sort of felt. I remember speaking to you after that game. I'm biased, right? Like I am. I like. I love the Warriors. I think they're a great organization, and what they've done is fantastic. I love watching their games, but I've never wore a Warriors helmet and outfit and, been to every training session, all that sort of stuff, right? Like their squad I have with the Aztecs, and I love what, you're doing and what you've done. Like you said, like the move to Dings RFC, that, getting us to live stream the home games, and it's just, I like feel like I'm part of it to a degree, right? And so, I remember talking to you after the game, and I felt, most likely with my bias, I felt like we should have won that game. And I thought, well, that's not actually a bad feeling. If if you'd have like fought and carved out a draw, that would have been something to celebrate. Like, that's a good result. But does that really set you up for a final win? Whereas if you're walking away from that, walking away from a draw thinking, fuck, like that's, they've snatched that draw from us, that's actually a stronger position for you to then go on and win the Britball. So I wanted to sort of get your thoughts on that. Like, did you feel like that first of all, did you feel like the draw was a fair result?
I think it probably was a fair result. Every time we play them is pretty close, and there's games where you could say, we should have done better, they should have done better. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think the last time they kind of gave us a little bit of a humbling was it last year at home at the start of the season? They beat us like 28-3. And like, we didn't perform well offensively in that game, but like we could have scored a few touchdowns. Like, like it's always competitive with them, or at least certainly in the last few years. And I think Britball needs more good competitive games. And there have been some years in the past at Aztecs where we've kind of beaten half the teams in the division by 40 plus points, and then we've lost to the Blitz and the Warriors by 40 plus points. And so the seasons we've been through where it's been like, well, we haven't had one competitive game. We've either been smashed or we've smashed people. Whereas this year, like the game against Manchester was competitive. Both the Blitz games were competitive. Both all three Warriors games were competitive. So, we've had like a lot of games this year. What's that? That's like 3, 4, 6. We've had 6 competitive games. The Amsterdam game was competitive. The Karlstad game, we lost 34-0, but it was like 21-0 at halftime. Like it was still relatively competitive. Do you know what I mean? So, you need to be playing more good football games to sort of push the quality of the the game up in the country. You know what I mean? And I think, you know, like Prem North as well this year was like competitive. Like Manchester and Tamworth had close games. You know, everyone who went up to East Kilbride either lost or had a close game. Do you know what I mean? So there's a lot of decent football kind of being played. You know, it's improving definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. On regarding your your career and what you want to achieve, like moving forward. At what point have you got a like goal or goals in mind of things that you want to do before you perhaps? Not that I'm trying to get you to move on, but you know, before you like, yeah, I've accomplished what I wanted to do. Like, what does that look like for you? If at all anything. I mean, I won't try and put words into your mouth. I'll let you.
Yeah, I don't know. Like when I go back to when I started my business and we had our daughter, I took like COVID year and the year after COVID when there were like the regional divisions. I took those 2 years off. So I've been like constantly doing football 12 months of the year, uni and adult, since 2000. And then the year after COVID, I took off. And during that time, I wanted to come back and get the Aztec youth team going again. Right. And it was like, I want to get the Aztec youth team going again, have competitive games with Blitz U19s. That'd be really exciting.
Yeah.
You know, and that was kind of what I wanted to do. And then Crispy, who was the Aztec head coach at the time, had some like work changes and had to work weekends. And so the Aztecs needed a head coach. And so I did that. But like at some point, it would be good to coach club youth football. That kind of excites me at some point. I've definitely got an idea in my head of how many Britballs I'd like to win as a head coach.
Yep.
I'm not going to put an exact number on that.
That's fair enough.
But I know what the number is.
Yeah. You've got an idea of what you like. Yeah. Want to achieve. And what about in like, because obviously you've entered into the CEFL. Are you looking to enter into that again this coming season next year?
Yeah, we will.
Have you got a goal for that, like to get to a certain round or to eventually win it? Like, is there something that you've got in mind for that?
We'll be trying to win it next year.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. And you know, there's good teams in it, right? And like you get better by playing good teams. And like, you know, we went to Karlstad this year and you know, they gave us a pretty firm slap. You know what I mean? And it was like, you know, and they didn't, I mean, you know, they're always, you know, good teams like that are always going to do some things schematically that cause you problems, but they just kind of beat us up a little bit. You know, we had like their receivers were able to block our DBs and, you know, their DBs were able to get off our receivers' blocks. And, you know, they were tough in the box. They had a lot of good players. They had a bunch of guys who've played some really good football. And, they were really tough. But, like, I think we can adjust to that. I think we can learn from that. And, you know, like, I don't – like, there are some teams that want to play against rubbish teams and beat up on them because they think it's fun beating people like 99-0.
Yeah.
Like I've never been one of those people. Like I would love, like, I mean, Swabishall were in the competition last year. I would love to play away at Swabishall or host them. You know, the Calander Broncos, I'd love to go and play them away or host them. You know, like proper European football teams with like the Karlstad Crusaders were, you know, teams that have got like heritage and pedigree and are good players and have got, you know, paid coaches and, you know, a number of paid professional players. You know, Britball's all amateur. You know, a lot of these teams are more professional than some of the kind of lower tier ELF teams. You know what I mean? And yeah, those are the kind of teams we want to be playing. And like, we're not going there just to kind of make up the numbers. Like, I think we should be hopefully seeded in the first round this year, which should mean we get a home game.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we'll have an away game. And last year, like, you know, we lost to Karlstad. And the game after that was the semi-final, and they lost to the Panthers in France, I think, who then went and lost to Calander. But those games were all quite close. So, do you know what I mean? Like last year, we were maybe sort of 40 points worse than the team who lost the final by 10 points or whatever. So, like, the gap between us and the teams winning the CEFL isn't as big as the gap was between us and the Warriors 3-4 years ago. And now we're more structured and we got a better plan. Like, I think we're able to kind of like accelerate our performance level on and off the pitch, sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Right. There's a couple of questions in the chat I want to bring up. There's only a couple of questions. If anyone's got any more that's watching, feel free to drop them in, and we'll see if they're worthy. But I'll also put a drop-in link up for people that want to drop in and actually speak to us on camera or off camera. But for now, this question's popped up from Joshy on YouTube saying, which player has been the biggest surprise talent? I imagine that's for the Aztecs this season.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of a difficult question to answer. I mean, we've got, because we're quite deliberate with how we develop guys. Like, I don't think there are necessarily like that many kind of like surprises as such. Like we've got anyone who's like a rookie coming to Bristol American football, they'll go and play Apache, right? And so we're not really, and it's the same as, I coach at UE as well, obviously, and there's a second team at UE. So I can't remember the last time I really coached a rookie. It might be as long as 10 years ago. And I went to Cardiff Cobra's practice last week, and, they got all the rookies in and they're teaching them to block and tackle and, what cover 3 is and what cover 2 is and all this kind of stuff. And I was kind of like, oh my God, I'd kind of forgotten what this was like and how, how much, there's a lot to do when you've got loads of rookies. And, we don't have that. Every year we've got sort of seasoned returning guys or guys who've played good football elsewhere. I guess it's not a surprise, right? But the impact AJ Carr had this year, because he's been our sort of best receiver for a number of years. But we had Tim Lucas this year who played in the CFL, and we had Darius Robinson who'd been in camp with the Bills, albeit as a DB. But like you've got guys who are like ex-professional athletes playing receiver, and AJ was our most kind of productive receiver throughout the year. And a little bit of that is because he's young and healthy, and those guys were like older and had to kind of manage stuff. But like like to bring in players of that quality, and AJ will have looked at those guys and been like, okay, they're doing that. That looks good, because AJ is like a sponge, and every opportunity to get better, he'll take it, and he'll have spoke to those guys and taken things off them and then used it. And that's what you get from having guys of that caliber around. Is all your local guys can get really good. We've had Joey Ampoma's been really good for us at running back this year.
Oh, mate, unreal. I love watching him.
And he's been around for a few years, and he was frustrated because he won't get as many carries because KK was there and TJ was there and these guys. But
God,
he learned from all those guys, different things, and he's a different kind of style of player to them, really. But he's learned from all those guys. And this year there were a couple of games where he got hardly any carries, and he had a face like on the sideline, go, never getting any carries. And then there's another game where suddenly, like the semi-final against Manchester, I think he had 15 carries and 100 yards or whatever, and
smiling from ear to ear, like
and then he's like this for a week after the game, and so it's Joey and AJ have both done really well, and we had a guy on defense, a guy called Fred Smith, who came along, who's a Brighton uni guy, and he kind of came along. I think it was the Easter holidays he first came along, and he came to practice, and like he did something wrong, and T kind of chewed him out like hard. But you need people who kind of set standards and raise expectations. And T chewed Fred out hard, and I was kind of like, again, one of those situations where like I didn't need to intervene or want to intervene, and it was just like, okay, that either that is going to be too much for that young player, or it's going to help like make him. And he responded really positively to it, and it's just got better and better throughout the year. And like honestly, like game 9 in the regular season, he wasn't really in contention to start at all. And then that game we drew with the Warriors, it was like, oh, maybe we should give Fred a little bit of time. And we did, and he did well. And then in the semi-final against Manchester, it was like, oh, maybe we should start him. And then by the time we got to the Warriors, it was like, yeah, we need, he's going to do this, that, and that, and that was in like a month. And, some of these sort of good young athletes that are smart and work hard, that can take a roasting from a senior player, if you put them in the right environment with the right coaching, with the right competition, with the right guys alongside them, with the right guys trying to block them, and you give them a little bit of taste of what it can be like for them. Some of these guys can develop like so quickly, and we have guys, and I've tried to recruit guys before from teams in the area or whatever, and they're like, oh, I can't play at that level. I'm not good enough. Well, you're not now because you're playing Division 2.
Yeah,
But,
yeah,
but the only way you're good enough is by coming and trying to do it. And
Yeah.
it doesn't happen overnight. Like some people take like a year or two to like adjust and get up to speed and get used to what's involved. And it does take some getting used to. Like we're a 3-day-a-week program now, so there's quite a bit of time to put in. And if you're putting 3 days a week in terms of stuff like in contact with the team, and you've got a lift, and a lot of these guys will be lifting 3 or 4 days a week.
Yeah.
And then we've got calls one night of the week, and then we've got practice twice a week, and there's kind of a lot on, and with the European games and stuff, at one point this year, I think we had like 9 games in 11 weeks at one point. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And people are like, oh, it's like, is it too much? Are you going to run out of steam come the playoffs? Well, we didn't. Part of the reason we didn't is because we start in the middle of March. There's loads of teams out there rolling around in puddles in January. And like I don't really believe that makes you a better football team. Do you know what I mean? Like the season's already like 6 months long. Like if you like, and yeah, it's a little bit different when you've got to teach rookies to block and tackle. But you could get all your rookies into a small gymnasium or a 5-a-side, football court, and you could just teach all your rookies to block and tackle and catch.
Yeah.
Your veteran returners, like 6-week preseason is plenty. Do you know what I mean? No one needs to be like rolling around in the mud in January. Do you know what I mean? Doing Oklahomas.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
I mean, I know you want to do that kind of stuff, but
I love hitting. But yeah. We're actually on that. There is a question about me from Russ. First saying love the transparency when I opened, and asking you what I was like as a player.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a certain sort of attitude you want in players, and we've just been kind of talking about some of the really good Americans we've had on the team, and the kind of like technical stuff that they're doing and how they prepare. Like that's part of it, right? But that kind of like in football, you need people that just kind of want to do some heavy lifting and get stuck in. And I remember you weren't starting on defense, and you were just like, if all I do is cover kicks, I'm just going to go down there and I'm going to blow someone up and I'm going to make a play. And I think we had like you say, we had a lot of those kind of young kids on the team that if they weren't starting on offense or defense, they'd get a little bit kind of like distracted, a little bit negative, whatever. And I think your kind of enthusiasm for special teams and contact and desire to kind of stick your head in there, do some hard work and that kind of thing, I think that's a really positive thing. And I think that rubbed off on some of the other younger players. And I think, something that's been quite big for us over the last few years, and you definitely kind of fitted into this, is, we've got a lot of players that kind of understand what their job is, and it might not be as a starter on offense or defense. Or this year, for example, we've had kind of the London Warriors with all the kind of personnel packages they run, like 1 minute they're in empty and the next minute they're in 22 personnel. And you just can't have the same 11 players on defense. Like you've got to be like matching them, otherwise you're just going to get destroyed. Like if you've got your linebackers that can like run and cover and tackle in open space, and the Warriors are in like 22 personnel, like they're just going to get run over. And similarly, if your guys that can hold up to 22 personnel, if they're on the field and you're in spread and D's running round, like they just ain't going to have the legs for it. And so, the defensive staff this year have done a really good job with personnel matching. And, we've got linebackers that there's certain games where they've just not played.
Yeah.
And then there's certain games where they've had a huge impact. Yeah. And they kind of lots of people are appreciating the horses for courses thing, Sam Hodge made a couple of massive plays in the bowl. And he kind of messaged me, I don't know, like a month before the end of the season. And he kind of realized where the depth chart was kind of shaken out DB wise. And he was kind of like, look, kind of feels like I'm not going to play much DB, want to get more involved on special teams. And, rather than just going to the defensive coordinator and saying, okay, we need to try and get Sam a little bit more involved, I was like, okay, what specifically do you want to do on special teams? Partly to kind of challenge him. And so that if he did it and went out there and didn't do it, I could say like, well, you want to do this, and you specifically said, I want to do that. And he was like, I want to do this, this, that. And one of the things was be a gunner on punt team.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, but you better go and make some plays. I'm not putting you
Yeah.
out there just. And then in the bowl, like, he kind of lays someone out and then recovers like a punt. And
Yeah.
quality. Like he kind of knew what his job was.
Yeah.
And that's what he was kind of doing,
Yeah.
And Spencer Cutland's been huge for us in the kicking game the last few years.
Unreal.
And was starting a receiver early in the season, and then we got so short of DBs, he had to play corner. And then, scoops and scores a pick six against the Warriors.
That's right. Yeah.
Scoops and scores a fumble for a touchdown against the Warriors.
Yeah, that's right. That was early doors, wasn't it? I remember the.
You know what I mean? So in June he's playing receiver, in July he's playing DB, and then come the bowl, he's not starting at either spot. But he gets some massive punts off with some nice hang time that Hodge is able to get under, and having a lot of people that understand, it takes a village, and they've got their part to play. And I think when you're successful and you're doing things the right way and you're treating people well, people will be satisfied knowing what their part is and trying to do their part kind of well,
Yeah, and I can attest to that, right? Like you said, there was bits that I felt I brought to it, and I remember when we were talking. I don't want to sort of give away your secret sauce or anything, but when we were talking about me joining, you were like, I'd like some older heads, some more veteran players that can just sort of spread what they do around, and like, yeah, I've been around the game a long time, and it was and you were bang on. There was a lot of these younger players that they couldn't see that they're playing a really important part at a particular time in or a place in the club, and would get dejected or would feel like that they're not being given a fair chance or whatever. And I think that environment, as the time I went on there, people started to understand that a lot more and were really proud of it. And like, I didn't feel any different in that squad to Ivan, the starting quarterback, who was an absolute star player, right? Like there was no like airs and graces. It was such a lovely unit of lads, and everyone got on well, and everyone appreciated and respected each other, and appreciated and respected the coaches. And like, that's, I think you need to give yourself a bit more credit to that. I know you won't, and that's fine, but I'm going to do it for you. I think you create a really nice environment to be able to perform and play football. But also, one, like, to your point, like, we're there to win. We're there to, like, this is a performance team. We want to win games. We want to perform. We're not here to just have a laugh. And like, it's not a place to go to just coast. It's not a place to go and not contribute and not join in and be part of that energy. So I think if you're a player that's willing to buy into that, which I think most players that take this game seriously are. I think what you've built at the Aztecs is just an amazing thing to be part of, and I'd imagine those players, when you do end up dishing out, I don't know how long it is, 6 weeks or whatever, until you get your rings and start dishing them out. There's probably not anyone that will get that ring and feel anything other than sheer pride, that they've got it, that they contributed to it and they're a part of it. And that's not something that's very easy to achieve. I think, like you say, the whole meritocracy thing doesn't really exist that in many organizations. But it certainly does exist at the Aztecs, and it's great. Like, probably another reason why I like the organization so much is that I feel like things are done the right way there, and you sort of want people that do things the right way to get the success, right?
Yeah, and it's like, you kind of made a joke about the secret sauce or whatever, but like, it's like it ain't complicated. It's like you treat people how you want to be treated. You speak to people how you want to be spoken to. You get coaches in who can teach the players to be better. You try and provide a good game day experience. We got a really good physio who looks after the guys.
Yeah,
like it's just kind of like, it's basic things done well. And demographically on the team, you definitely need some good young players. You definitely need some young players that are going to be good, that are kind of edging forward. You need some old grizzled guys who think they're past it, because you're going to wring every last ounce of good football they've got out of them. You need some old guys that are You know, there's some guys, there's some guys, you know, someone I'm recruiting at the moment who's never played Prem football before. They're getting on a little bit. They thought they'd never have the chance. I
Mm,
know they're in good enough shape, and they can do a job and help us.
mm,
And some people haven't got the confidence, but you know, you come to practice, see how you like it. And
yeah.
most people come to practice, and it's not quite like a lot of stuff they've been involved in before, and they kind of kick on and they find that they can sort of achieve some things that they didn't think they might have been able to achieve. You know what I mean?
Mm,
And you know, that's it's good. It's good giving people opportunity. And you know, I always kind of say, right, like I'm there for the players. The club is there for the players.
yeah.
Like there's some places you go to, you know, it's all about the cult of the club or the cult of the head coach or whatever.
Yes.
And you know, like I ain't interested in any of that stuff. It's like you got to be there for the players. It's got to be fun for them. You know, I want it to be fun for me. You know, like I don't want to be, you know, bickering with players about who started and who didn't start and whatever. You know, we've got like an open environment. You know, we'll have kind of pragmatic discussions with guys about why they're not starting. Everyone gets together and has a beer after the game. You know, and that's things that so few people in Britball are doing that. Like I don't think like all the teams in Prem South, the only team that you can kind of have a beer with after the game was the Hearts Cheetahs.
Yeah. Good lads there. I like.
Yeah, they are good lads. Yeah, there's nothing, there's nothing really to be done at any of the other venues,
Mm,
and yeah, it's just that's you know, it's frustrating. You know what I mean?
right. So enough about the Aztecs. Let's. I know this just from our brief conversation prior to the starting. I understand that you wanted to talk a little bit more about Britball, or and you know some of the good things that we're seeing in Britball at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I just think right there's, you know, there's on all the social stuff, right? Like everyone will just kind of pick up really quickly on all the negative stuff, right?
Yes.
And it's just so easy to be like negative about stuff. But I think like the vast majority of people in Britball want Britball to be better.
Yep.
And there are a couple of exceptions to that who just want Britball to be rubbish forever. But the vast majority of people want Britball to be better, right?
Yep.
And, you know, people are kind of spout off on socials and this kind of stuff. But I think since I've been involved in the game since like 2000, like where we are now compared to where we are then is just night and day. Like you look at like you know the best organization in the country, the flagship organization 20 years ago was the London Warriors. They were playing at Southwark Park at the time, and
Yep.
like on the field that Olympians team was like still really good. But like there wasn't much there was no one in stadiums with game day events and stuff.
No.
And you look at the stuff the Pirates are doing, it's awesome. You look at the stuff the Titans are doing, it's really good. We're doing good stuff. You know, the Coventry Phoenix, they're trying really hard. There are other teams that are, you know,
Caesars.
yeah. See, there's a lot of good stuff going on.
Yep.
You know, there's lots of coaches going out to Oshkosh and other places, learning, trying to get better.
Mm.
Like 25 years ago, there was really none of that. One or two people, you know, Rich Wurzel went out to the States, and you know, there were a couple of other people, but like there just wasn't much of it. Now there's loads of people going. You know, two people from my staff this year have been out in the States learning already. You know, I've gone out to some of the ELF teams and that kind of thing. Beers on Russ by the looks of it.
Popped up and said that there's a venue change in January for the Cats, which has a bar. Cool. Cheers for
Yeah,
letting
that's good. And they and you know, like programs that want, like the cats want to get better, right? And you know, some of their guys, you know, Gary, their chairman was like, oh, you know, we got somewhere kind of like where you play near us, you know, we want to get it right. What do you do about the line marking? I'd accidentally the lines of things we mark in yellow spray paint that's like it washes away in like 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I accidentally bought a pack of blue. And so when Gary kind of said that and said they were kind of struggling getting the rugby club to agree to what they could use to mark the pitch, I just brought a can of blue spray paint for him and was like, this is what we use, just take it and try it.
Yeah.
Like, and like, you know, I want other teams, like we should be helping each other, you know,
Yes.
it should be collaborative, you know.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
like I said, you know, Britball's in the best place it's been in, and you know, people will take a pop at BAFA and stuff, but like you look at the Sport England money that's come in, it is going to be transformational to the sport, yeah. And I think, you know, 5 years ago, like if someone had said to me, chances of that happening in the next 5 years, I'd have just been like, no way.
Exactly. Yeah.
And now it is. And you look at the flag stuff and the LA28 stuff, and there's just loads of really positive stuff going on. And even in the operational running of the league and stuff, they're open to ideas and stuff. Like, we play our games on Saturday nights. 2 years ago, it was like, no, you have to play them on Sundays.
Yes.
And then, Joe Walker was flexible and fair play again. The Hearts cheaters were like, yeah, we'll do a 7 p.m. kickoff on a Saturday night. And they did it, and it was great. We had a game under the lights, and, everything is moving in the right direction in a really positive way. I think we're really fortunate having Chad. Like, there's loads of real good progress going on. And I think a lot of people in Britball will kind of expect him to, directly impact them today. Like, that ain't gonna happen.
Right.
Like, there's just him, right? There ain't 10 of him. If there was 10 of him, maybe he'd be able to get around to every Division 2 team in the season. But like, it's not practical, right? But like, you see the stuff that's going on at the higher level that's going to trickle down and positively impact all the other levels of football. And I know loads of people were really disappointed about the Div 2 and Div 1 bowls going and stuff. But like, they're trying it. They're trying different things. You've got to try different things. You can't do the same thing every time and expect a different result. And the GFL have been doing promotion relegation games for years. Like, I'm pretty sure we haven't, if we take the view that the GFL don't know what they're doing and we shouldn't be at least considering some of what they're doing, like, I'd say anyone who thinks like that hadn't been to a GFL game. Yeah. Because they do things pretty well.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, no, I would. So before we came on, I said I don't think Britball's been in the time that I've been involved in it, which is coming up to 20 years that I've been involved in just Britball. I don't think we've had it. It's never been in a better state. In the last 12 months, there's been £1 million worth of funding committed to Britball externally. That and we know half of that is for flag. But that's not a bad thing, and everyone sort of like moans. We'll find something to moan about.
Mate, and like I said, someone said, who's been like real big for the Aztecs this year? AJ Carr. He's been playing flag since he was like 3 years old.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, and you're playing a big physical team like the London Warriors, and you've got like a 5'5" kid from like Manchester who's making plays and changing the game. And like. More of those flag skills cross-fertilizing into the kitted game will make the kitted game more like exciting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and it's it's a gateway sport into contact, right? Like, I've got two little boys, my two eldest little boys. One's 7, one's 5. They could, I don't know, they haven't had it, but there could be a flag session at an NFL flag session at their school, and you couldn't do that with kitted, right? You can't put helmet and pads on kids after school club, right? But you can get them holding an American football, learning the basic skills, throwing, catching, evasion, the basic downs and distance and all that sort of stuff, right? There's And they may continue on. They may leave the sport, right? But they may continue on and stay in flag, and that's not a bad thing. But you also have got these great skills developing that are completely transferable over to the kid.
For sure, and
you shouldn't be forgotten about.
Yeah, for sure. And there's just so much good stuff going on, and like I'm on LinkedIn, right? Sport England shared a post that Bafford put out. So you've got like Sport England sharing Baffer posts on LinkedIn.
We've never had that before.
No, the other governing bodies are going to see that,
So I saw. I think it was something you might have commented on that Chad posted. He's actually got an article on Sport England's website.
Yeah.
Like that. Like I've never seen that, and that alone, like to get on their radar to the degree that they want to share your story as a growing sport. We're a strategic sport with Sport England now, where we never have been before. Strategic in that there's maybe a 3, 5, 10-year plan with them for them to help us grow as a sport. That's massive, right?
Like, yeah, absolutely.
Like we've never been at the table. We've never qualified. And now we are. And obviously we've got this first, it's like they're giving us the first little bit of money, right? Like here's 500K, see what you do with it, right? But doing the right things with that money, and obviously you need to get it signed off and allocated. Like, it's not just, oh, we think we need 500 grand. Oh, okay, it's properly
Well,
planned.
and
I know
there's
that because I do funding myself, right?
right, and there's an awful lot of process and governance involved in it. And people will
Loads.
say, "Oh, Bath have got 500 grand." Like, where's my bit of it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They are.
BA.
Yeah, I know.
There's loads of governance, and everyone says, "Oh, I've read the accounts. Look at what they're spending on consultancy." Like,
Yeah.
they're like there will be professional people that need to be involved in order to engage the appropriate bodies. And we got people, we got people in place that are like doing it properly now. And you look at how it was run several years ago, and I'm a massive fan of Steve Rains. I absolutely love him. He's been really supportive of me over the years, but I'm pretty sure Steve Rains wasn't getting an article shared on the Sport England website and wouldn't have been able to get into, and he was obviously running the league for a number of years. And before that, I don't know, Drew Anderson, and before that, Glenn Shield, those guys, none of those guys had anywhere near the kind of traction that we've managed to get now with, and Peter Ashley was the guy that opened a lot of those doors, and he got a load of stick, right? And I don't think anyone really kind of saw the kind of shit he was shoveling behind the scenes to like open some doors and stuff, and he was definitely the right guy at the right time with some big ideas to open some doors. And then, Chad's definitely been the right guy to kind of walk through those doors and start signing some bits of paper and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot to be optimistic about in the sport. There's and like you said, on the media side, there's a lot more media outlets. There's a lot more engagement, clicks, views, comments on Britball related posts, which obviously swells the visibility of this content, and that is only good for the sport. And it's funny, like that's sort of what I feel, right? Like I want the sport to grow. I want us to get professional leagues in the UK. That I want it to be I want people to see it for the great sport that we see it for, right? That I've seen for years, and people think that every time a new media outlet pops up that I'm like furrowing my brow, like hating them and stuff, and I don't. Like, I see that like just having more people, videographers. I see a lot of videographers at games now, people with drones pre-game flying them around and creating content. Little interviews and all sorts of like just little puff pieces, and all of that is brilliant, because it's showing that there's interest and that people want to spend and all these people that do all this stuff, no one's getting paid to do it, right? So we're attracting more people who are willing to spend their time, money, expertise on our sport, and that's only a good thing. So, and I'm hoping that this momentum continues. I know I'm just talking about one facet of it with media, but that's the side that I'm involved in, right?
Yeah, for sure. And
now, I want to see, I want to see more teams doing, and we have seen in the last 3 years we've done live streaming. More and more teams are starting to do it, and some teams reach out to us and ask us how to do it, and we're happy to do that. Like, this is all part of growing the sport. And if you don't have that growth mindset, if you have this sort of, oh no, I'd rather be the top of the pile mindset, the sport will fucking never get to where it's capable.
Yeah.
And it'll just stay like it has been for the maybe 30 years previous.
For sure.
I'm saying like the last sort of 5, we have seen some progression. I'm saying before that, it just sort of, it would get to a certain level and just stagnate, because it was.
Well, there needs to be a product, right? It needs to be a product to push on. We need to be a product. And there's so few teams out there that are actually putting a product on the field by like the way they look and that kind of thing. And it's only little stuff, right? At the moment, we're the best team in the country, right? And there's things like we put, we wanted to make sure everyone had a silver lid on in the bowl game.
Did you? Right. Yeah. Okay.
It's not a massive deal.
That used to be a rule. Did you know that? About 5 years, but maybe it was pre-COVID.
It was, and then it drifted.
Yeah. Play in a playoff game in Britball at any level if you didn't all have the same lid color.
Yeah. And it's like, so some of the stuff we're doing is relatively groundbreaking at Dings in terms of the home game day stuff. Some of the stuff we're doing is stuff that was minimum standards years ago, and just trying to kind of get all that stuff right and put a product on the field that's like attractive, that people want to come and watch. And if you can do that, you can generate gate receipts, and if you can generate gate receipts, you know, we had one home game this year that was like break even, like the cost of all the game were covered
Was it?
by the gate receipts.
Awesome.
You know, if we can do that for five regular season games, a home European game, and a home semi-final, like you've got 7 games that are all covering their own costs.
Yeah.
You know, you're suddenly in a really good spot. You know what I mean? And when you're putting that kind of product on the field, you get more. You know, we've had a couple of companies reach out about sponsoring us this off season because they see a product and they see some value. You know.
Oh, I'll take credit for that. You're welcome, mate. For the live
Appreciate
stream.
it. You know, the live streams.
D has popped up and asked a question. What is the key to getting a successful offense?
I mean, you know, like if you've got a decent O-line, it's a good start, right? And if you ain't got a decent O-line, you got an issue. You know, for me, right, there needs to be an element of balance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, if you're 60+% runner, 60+% pass, like, you know, the other team can, you know, figure you out a little bit kind of easier.
You can scheme to a tendency, can't you?
Yeah, you know. So if there's some kind of like balance, little, you know, you need some motion, you need some misdirection. Like there just needs to be enough on the menu to kind of keep the defense kind of thinking on their feet, you know, and to not allow them to kind of get settled in and tee off, you know. And you know, I think everyone is shaped by their experiences. I was an offensive lineman, and I knew what hurt me and what helped me. And when there was no motion, no misdirection, and we just had to try and dig guys out and get north-south, that is difficult. And I think, you know, there's definitely, I feel like we've got a duty to the players. Bearing in mind all these guys go to work on a Monday morning, I feel like we've got a duty to the players to not run them into the ground.
Yeah,
like I don't, you know, like back when I was playing, you know, there would be like running backs that would like have 35 carries and then like limp into work on a Monday morning. And you know, we don't really do that. Like I couldn't tell you what the most number of carries any running back had in a game for us this year, but I'm pretty sure it was not any more than 15 carries.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure no one would have got 15 carries in back-to-back games. You know, we in the semi-final, we went a little bit easier on Emmanuel Bauer and then leaned on him a little bit more in the bowl, you know. So, you know, kind of using the guys, giving them a little bit of time to rest and recuperate and, you know, spreading the ball out, you know, that again gets the kind of defense, you know, gives them a lot to think about, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's nothing extreme or wild. You know, Rian's done an amazing job for us this year. And, you know, he'd give a more in-depth answer than me. But if you can be multiple, if you can motion, if you can be balanced, if you can spread the ball around amongst different players, like all those things will kind of like help you. And you know, offensive line wise, you need a good O-line coach and you need to have recruited some good O-linemen because, you know, one bad O-lineman that the opposition can take advantage of. Yeah. And it's tough, man.
Yeah, it gives you 2 blitzing lanes.
And if that's D Williams asking the question,
I don't know if it is. It's just a D. Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, you know, if you've got someone with his playmaking ability, they can get you out of so many holes and problems, but not every time. You know, like you know, there needs to be. You know, there's 11 people on the field, right? So that's something that I always think is quite amusing and a bit of an issue with lots of kind of Britball offenses, right? In Britball, right, there are QBs, these kind of classic kind of Britball pocket passer QBs, right, who don't run the ball, can't run the ball themselves, don't really run any run fakes. So whenever you run the ball, it's like you've got 10 men on the field. The QB isn't holding anyone, is no kind of threat. So you're playing a 10.
Also the predictability that, you know, that as soon as that ball drops down, I know as a linebacker I can commit to that. To that.
And the majority of Britball teams don't get the QB involved in the run game at all. Yeah. And in the pass game, you're lucky if a QB's 33%, you know, completion rate. So suddenly, like in 80% of the plays, the QB isn't having a positive effect on the game. And there's loads of teams out there where, you know, like no one likes throwing hitches or slants. Everyone's like taking shots. So you've got all these QBs all over Britball who are, you know, on 70% of the plays, they're handoff machines and they don't impact the play at all. And on the other 30% of plays, they're taking shots on like low percentage plays and stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Elliot Hoyt, what a name. So son of was he defensive coordinator, Nigel?
Yeah.
So son of Bristol Aztecs defensive coordinator Nigel, also at Britball. I think he's a Hall of Famer in Britball now. Nigel.
Well, he's a Hall of Famer and he won the World League, yeah.
Yeah, unbelievable. But Elliot also stands on his own 2 feet. Ex-Boise D lineman, and I think he's on. I think he's in the Hall of, or was in the Hall of Fame for the Cornwall Monarchs. They're like Hall of Fame, but he was part of the setup at Bristol, wasn't he?
So he played Aztecs youth when we won the Youth Bowl in 2007, and Dan Mayer, who is the UE head coach, was also on that team.
No way.
Yeah,
that's another claim to fame for Elliot then.
Yeah.
He played with Dan Mayer.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So Elliot popped up here and said, if there was ever a professional league in the UK, do you think it would be inside or outside of BAFA?
Yeah, I think it would be inside. I think there's definitely a kind of a impetus and an interest from them to do that in the medium term.
Right.
I think the conditions are not sort of quite in place now.
Yeah.
And they, you know, BAFA obviously kind of need to sort of cater to the pre-existing teams, right? And at the moment, like, how many teams are there who might be able to operate in even a semi-pro league? I couldn't tell you because I don't know the ins and outs of all the other teams. But like from where I'm standing and from what I've seen, I would think there's only 3 teams in the UK at the moment that organisationally and commercially could operate in a semi-pro league, and that's probably us, the Titans, and the Pirates.
Yeah,
Coventry might be close. I don't know. But you know, whilst there's only 3 or 4 teams, I don't really think it's viable. The time where you get to 5 or 6 or 7 teams that are, then I think it's viable. And I think what it needs, right, is someone to kind of take a lead and show everyone else how to do it and what the kind of steps are. And like we were chatting about earlier, you know, I kind of mentioned chatting to the guys at Cambridge about, you know, how to, you know, mark the lines and that kind of thing. Like, you know, we'll help people with things like that. Like at the moment, we're the top of the pile. You know, we haven't always been. I'm sure there'll be a time when we won't be again, but we're always open to help people. And if anyone's ever got any questions from me on, you know, how we run the club or any of the coaching stuff, like, you know, always happy to kind of help and support other folks. Do you know what I mean?
So just on that point, so I've got a little personal anecdote to add. So I not many people know this, but I started my working career at Portsmouth Football Club as a commercial trainee. So I was a YTS, but not for the football side because I was not good at football, but the commercial side, so learning about the business of sport. And one thing that really struck me while I was, you know, in my time there, I was actually there for 2 stints. When Portsmouth were not very good, and then when they got into the Premier League, and they were very good, and that was good fun. But what struck me is something that really surprised me was that behind the scenes, football clubs, Premier League, whatever league, they all get on really well. They all help each other out. So like there were match days where I went up to Liverpool and I went up to Spurs, and I just sort of met my counterpart there within the organisation and just sort of saw how they ran things on a match day, and they'd give me documents they were using to train staff and show me different things that they were doing and how they were talking to suppliers and stuff, and just helping each other out with different ideas. Charlton Athletic were one of the best run clubs ever, and that always struck me because I was like, yeah, but we want to beat them. And you're like, yeah, we want to beat them on the field, but we're not really you're not gonna get someone to deflect, are you? And that's what someone pointed out to me. It's not like, you know, the Charlton Athletic away fan's going to come to Portsmouth Football Club and be like, well, I'm a Pompey fan now, they've won me over, right? So they don't have that risk. And that's the same in Britball, right? Like we're a sport and there's nothing to lose from sharing ideas and how to make clubs better. There's probably something to lose on the field if you start talking about tactics and stuff like that. But when it comes to things like recruitment and, like you say, like business agreements and how to get to the next stage, if someone's done something somewhere, there's nothing wrong with sending the elevator down and sort of saying, look, this is the makeup, this is how you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, we want Britball to be better.
Yeah.
And we'll kind of, anything we can help other folks with, we will. Like the Blitz, right? We have a really, I mean, I probably don't know how many times I've said I hate the London Blitz. Like, the on-field rivalry has been.
I know what you mean? Yeah.
The on-field rivalry has been brutal for about 20 years.
Yeah.
But off the field, we've always gotten really well with them. Back to Ed Morgan and Mossy, and now the guys at the Blitz. Now, I've been having a couple of emails with some of those guys the last few days about some stuff that we agree on that we want to speak to the league on, and like there's good cooperation, and we both want to see good football on the field.
Yeah.
And good relationship with Manchester as well, and and Amanda and Spoonie up at East Kilbride. Like there's lots of folks like sharing good ideas and chatting to each other. And that's all really kind of positive. And the teams that are doing that and are sharing good ideas and like helping each other up, they're the teams that will kind of rise to the top, right? And people who aren't interested in doing any of that stuff will kind of drop off,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's the only way that you're going to move the sport forward, right? Like it has to be, the whole it takes a village mentality, right? But at a higher scale, you've got to work together and you've got to share ideas. And I've said for a while, like we could, if teams pulled together and centralized on even things like buying power for coaches, like for away travel. You could go to some big national operator and be like, look, we need this many trips a year, blah, blah, blah. And you get it at a much better rate, right? And then, apportion out percentage wise, there's things that can be done that might take, someone at a league level to get involved with so that there's like trust in it, right? But there's that, we're a lot more stronger together than we are in our component parts. And I think that mentality needs to continue and to prevail. Right, Nick Knowles from what's the TV show? I was going to say Home. DIY, yeah. Nick, he's a big fan. So Nick has said, how do you feel about the state of Division 2? What do you think stops teams from getting up to Division 1 or the Prem?
I mean, like the state of Division 2, I mean, it depends what you're judging it. Like if you're judging it as a football spectacle, Division 2 is awful.
Yeah.
Like it almost doesn't look like football. And like that's just my view, right? And that's not to demean anyone playing Division 2. I'm sure there are some good Division 2 teams that are run well, that generate positive outcomes for the players on like a participation kind of level. But if you're talking about it from a performance point of view and how I look at football from the Aztecs perspective and all that kind of stuff, Division 2 is almost not football.
So I think that's the word, and that's the spectrum that you just sort of pointed out. At one end you've got performance, and one end you've got participation. And I agree. Not that the question was asked to me, but if you make the decision that you don't want to be a participation team and that you want to be a performance team and you want to get to those heady heights, you need to start acting like it. And it will happen, and you'll attract those people that
absolutely.
It's like when you play for a rugby team, and the fourths are just a social, like they just want to have a drink, and they have a great time, and they're funny people, they're great people to be around. They're quite good at the game, but they're not the first team.
Yeah. And the quality of football even in Division 1 isn't that great, that if a team don't want to get up through the leagues, it can't be done.
Yeah.
Look at the Scunthorpe Alphas, right?
Yeah.
I don't know when they started, but it wasn't long ago, and they're in Prem North next year. Yeah. And like, I'm pretty sure they ain't got a 200 grand a year budget, and they haven't smuggled any NCAA Division 1 running backs or anything. Like they've put a good product on the field. They've attracted good guys in. They found a little bit of a sweet spot geographically where there isn't, and you could definitely argue there should be a powerhouse team in Yorkshire somewhere. I know
Well,
they're. I think
yeah.
but like they've done really well, and there's a lot of folks in that area that were looking for a good, well-run team, and they found one now, and they're in the Prem. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Cool. The comments, the questions are flying in now. We've opened up a Pandora's box. So, do you believe an English or British franchise in the ELF is possible?
I mean, I think right. The costs are substantial, and with us being out of the EU and there being the English Channel in the way, I think the costs are very substantial, and it's problematic. I visited with the Rhine Fire a couple of years ago, and their general manager was telling me about the logistical problems and the costs involved in their away game at the Madrid Bravos. And it was almost too much for the Rhine Fire to deal with. The Rhine Fire are getting 18,000 people to home games. They've got multiple serious sponsors, and it's a big challenge for them completing some of those big international away games. I think we're a long way from a team in Britain having that kind of setup and functionality. I don't know this, but my gut feel is the NFL probably don't want an ELF team in the UK.
No, of course not.
And I don't think, whilst they couldn't stop it happening, I'm pretty sure they could cause problems and make it difficult.
Yeah, so the NFL's MO is to get more people supporting the NFL, right? Like that's what they're here for. They don't care about Britball or American football in the UK. I mean, they're doing stuff at the very base level with the schools program, and that's a really good thing. The flag thing.
Yeah.
You've got the Jags UK, which do Jag Tag, and they've also got the Gridiron Grant, which is fantastic. They just expanded that. I saw a release about that earlier. So there are pockets of good things happening, but nothing. If the NFL were interested in in the British leagues, would be in a much different place after them showing.
Sure, but the NFL's a business, right? The NFL's a business. The NFL are there to make money.
Yeah.
And people go on about being in the ELF, like we had 180, 200 people to one game last year. I think Manchester had similar to one of their games or whatever. I think the Pirates had a good haul to their game against the American team they played. But Britball, I think there was probably 400 or 500 people at Britball. Like that kind of number of fans isn't going to sustain an ELF team traveling internationally.
Yeah,
it just ain't.
Yeah, I get that. I agree with that. It's funny because I didn't go to Britball this year, and the reason for me not going, there was only one game on that day. I was like, I'll be traveling for as much time as I'll be there. Either way. So I was like, fuck that. If it was if there was more games like there was the previous year, so that's the whole Div 2, Div 1, or if there was like the women's final before it, I probably would have gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just my view on this ELF thing. So we did report on I think it's Leighton Orient, English team that have got an American consortium or American investment, and they have said that they are interested in creating an ELF team, a new team, a new franchise. But there's been no more. I think with there's been a bit of a fallout for the ELF and a few of the teams that have sort of splintered off, and it's a little bit up in the air at the moment as to like they're
a little bit up in the air, or a lot up in the air.
Yeah, a lot up in the air. Well, yeah. I try not to get too caught up in non-British football because it's just like, I mean, European football for me has always just been like loads of people moaning about stuff all the time. I suppose Britball's the same, but European it gets really catty, right? And so
did you really just say that?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, I think it's worse. I think it's worse, right? Anyway, yeah. So I just been like, I'll show me the outcomes. I'll worry about the outcomes. But so yeah, there's this ELF and EFA, I think it is, that are sort of knocking heads and want to win, and who cares? But that'll be the Premier League. But yeah, so I feel like once that sort of settles, the dust settles on that, then we should see some, hopefully some movement in.
But my gut feel is that A, there's no one in the UK that's ready to do it. B, the ELF and EFA wouldn't want a team in the UK really, and nor would the NFL. So it feels.
Well, they've already said they want a team in the UK.
Sorry,
they've already said they want a team in the UK.
Yeah, I
This,
mean,
this guy put like 10 million into the ELF.
okay, saying you want a team in the UK and
And doing
actually
it, yeah, I
not
know
the
they're two different things.
so the
Well,
guy at Leighton Orient does. He's put 10 million into the ELF, right?
yeah,
He's got to be pretty concerned that 75% of the teams have just left.
I
I'd imagine he's probably wondering where his 10 million quid is.
know. Well, that's if he's given it. You know, there's always due diligence and
Yeah.
maybe parachute payments and stuff. So he
Well,
probably hasn't given the whole 10 million over yet. But yeah, you'd be a bit pissed off.
you say there's always due diligence. I'm not necessarily sure there is always due diligence, and that's probably part of the problem.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I suppose where
Yeah.
it depends on where the money's coming from. If it's his own money, then yeah, probably not as much. But anyway, Dan has said, Pete, congratulations. I haven't even said that yet. Congratulations, first of all, on the Britball. Any advice for recruiting coaches or coaching assistants? From Dan Vickery, that is.
I mean, yeah. I mean, my kind of advice would be, right, if someone's prepared to come along and coach, you let them. Like I've heard other Britball teams and coaches. Someone told me a while ago that a head coach they knew had sacked the entire offensive staff. Like I don't know anyone in Britball that like is doing so off coaches that they can like tell coaches to go away.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? They're probably in the wrong role, or probably they didn't get the support they needed from the head coach, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, if you've got people who want to coach for you and they're prepared to put the time in and develop and stuff, then you need to give them an opportunity. And you know, it doesn't matter if they're 20 or 65. Like, like be open to anyone. Do you know what I mean? Be open to anyone and give people opportunities. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Cool. Cheers, Pete. And then I think this is the last one. We probably need to wrap it up soon. So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on non-BAFA approved teams and events popping up? And actually, I was going to ask you about this because you recently won on the back of your Britball win. You got the more prestigious win of the Hellhounds E5 tournament win. So, I'm imagining your thoughts are positive on this. But yeah.
It was it's like that was good, right? And I think like BAFA do have limited resource, right? And the idea that they can kind of run everything, I don't think is necessarily possible, And I think where there are things that other people want to run that are positive, why not? Like I think the E5 thing was positive. Like I totally get why BAFA will be slightly nervous about non-sanctioned things going ahead. And it being kind of considered British American football and then not having any control over it. I completely get that. But I think the E5 thing was a good tournament. It was well run. And, I was, we were talking about due diligence a minute ago, Jordan Metcalf, who run it, I was like, like this needs to be insured. Yeah. And he got all that sorted. He sent me all the documents, so, he's got his head switched on, and it was done properly,
Yeah, it was awesome. I unfortunately couldn't make it on the day because right up until about 2 weeks before, I hadn't realised that it clashed with one of my friend's birthday weddings.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to. I wasn't there on the day, but I really wanted to be. But I thought it was a fantastic idea. I had Jordan on here last week actually, and one before the tournament talking about it all. And I've seen a lot of people say this probably the most exciting development that we've had in Britball in a number of years. And the bit about BAFA sanction, BAFA, like I know this from talking to Jordan, he actually said it. BAFA were brilliant with him, like they were getting involved in there. They put resource towards it, gave him time. The only reason it didn't get sanctioned, like the official sanctioning, was because they wanted to keep so the E5 guys wanted to keep their costs down, and there was a cost to getting the sanctioning right. But that's not something that they're closed off to for future tournaments, right? So we may see the next one or the one after will be BAFA sanctioned, and with that sanctioning comes BAFA refereeing. I don't like that. I don't like. Everyone always says BAFA is separate to BAFA, or why are they allowed to gatekeep them behind this sanction thing? It seems a bit odd to me, but focusing on the more positive side of that is that this wasn't something that was done cloak and dagger in the darkness, away from the spotlight of BAFA, the scanning spotlight of BAFA. Like they were engaged with it, they loved it,
Yeah.
And that's a real positive thing, you know. And again, like a complete change in approach from the national governing body. I actually don't think that BAFA should run any of the leagues. I think they should all have their own, like, you know, like the Premier League, like the FA are their own separate thing, and they look after England football. The RFU look after England rugby, and I think that should be the same for BAFA. So they should have the GP programs, but then the leagues like should have like a Premier League, you know, whatever else, like an organisation that runs it separately, but in collaboration with BAFA.
So 2 comments I'd make on that is, number one, when you look at the organizational capacity and capability of most of the teams in Britball, I wouldn't trust most of them to run a BAF, let alone their own division. In a lot of cases,
I'm not. I'm saying, like, who is it? Oh, you said a dude's name earlier. Who is it that runs the
Joe Walker
fixtures?
Joe Walker does them.
Yeah. So why not Joe as an independent? You know, it's like separate out. He's in charge of that new entity. I don't know, British leagues or whatever. And he runs it, and it's not put on the shoulders of the clubs. It's still that same relationship.
Well, I think historically, right, there's been loads of kind of silos. Like, you know, back in the days when Bucks, it was Bacafal, it was a separate league, you know, and the refs have been separate, and BAFCA's been separate, and it's all been separate. And I think part of what they're doing now is trying to streamline everything, get it under the BAFA kind of head. I think that makes sense. I think that's what Sport England will expect. And, you know, you kind of said a minute ago, you know, I don't know why BAFA would kind of want to sanction or keep everything under the BAFA umbrella. And I think the answer is probably right. Sport England will kind of look at it. And if there's kind of contraband American football activities going on that aren't controlled by BAFA, I think they would be saying to BAFA, well, why is that going on outside of your kind of remit? You know what I mean? I think there's probably a reasonable expectation that the American football organizations will be arranged by BAFA because they're the governing body.
Well, if that's the case, then sanction it for free.
Yeah, I you know, I don't know enough about the kind of details on it or whatever, but
I don't either. But but for me, like, if there's a concern from a governance perspective from the, it's not, what are they? It's the one above the national governing body. Well, actually, Sport England aren't that. It's DCMS is the highest body, aren't they, in government in this? But Sport England, they're funded by national lottery money, aren't they? And set up to govern standards across the country. But yeah, if they're looking for a certain thing, and you know, one of those things happens to be sanctioning any league or anything that happens in the sport, well, surely they could still sanction a separate not broke away, but a separately managed league, and you've got proof of that working elsewhere. You know, like the Premier League, the rugby, hockey, lacrosse, all of these leagues have got they've got their national governing body, and then they've got their own little, like, I looked into lacrosse recently. They've got, I think it's called SEMA, SEMA, something like that. SEMA. And again, so they look after everything in the south, and they report up into the lacrosse.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also examples of those kind of things not working, like the all the regional rugby teams in Wales. They were not run by the WRU, and that got messy. All the top Premier League teams were going to leave the Premier League and join the European Super League a couple of years ago. I think the French national rugby team have suffered from the top 14 teams kind of running the league out there. So I think there's examples of both ways working and not working, you know?
So like I said, I feel like the best way for that to operate is the national governing body is separate from the running of the league. But like I said, like if it's a concern about future funding from Sport England, then they shouldn't be charging for the sanctioning to happen, or they should be charging less to make it more appealing and encourage growth, right? Encourage more of that happening.
But I don't think they would necessarily want to encourage growth of more outside of BAFA activities. I think BAFA probably want to try and provide them themselves. Like, so the regional setup for the U19s.
Yeah,
but that's an example of BAFA setting up a, or bringing something into the fold.
I didn't think it was BAFA that set it up. I thought it was SGS that set that up.
Okay, yeah. So they set it up, but then the addition of the extra teams and the kind of formalizing it a little bit has been since it
Done by
was.
Baffa.
Yeah, so I think that makes sense.
Yeah, cool. Right, we've got nothing else. No more comments coming in, Pete.
Okay, that's cool. Everyone's had enough, Steve.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, but but thank you for your time, Pete. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
Is there anything else that you wanted to say, or do you want to say anything in closing?
No.
You're good. Appreciate your time, mate. It's been really good. Went on a bit longer than I thought, but I really appreciate it, mate.
Nice one. Thanks, mate. And I appreciate all your help as well.
Yeah, all good, mate. Looking forward to next season.
Yeah, nice one. Thanks, Steve.
All right, mate. Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers, mate. Bye.